ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Hugo Sports 360 podcast. I am your host, Hugo Traverso, and we're going to be talking mainly about the UFC 257. It's going to be a little bit more fighting-oriented podcast this week. UFC 257 going on. Just looking back at Kobe and Hank Aaron. We're also going to be going over the new news on Jake Paul and the fight he's putting on. I have an article going up that's right out right now. At the time of the recording, but at the time of you watching this, it is out. 4:15 is the drop time. This video's 4:15 is the drop time, so you should be able to see this and go see it. Today we're going to be doing a relatively short podcast. And as you know, I got my account back. So that's a Google update. I got my account back, and it was, thank God. And, we're back. So I just wanted to say I'm here, and let's get into the podcast. And so, first of all, we had the UFC 257. Obviously, you know, if you watched the last podcast, that'll be on the end screen here of this video. It was weird. It was crazy. UFC 257, Conor McGregor got knocked to the ground. A lot of people made memes on it. Said, hey, now I'm going to have to fight Jake Paul. I'll go over that later. But, it was genuinely a weird night. First of all, we had the streaming problems, and then, we had Mike Chandler, who a lot of people thought wasn't going to win, just absolutely came out and won, and Dan Hooker had this guy that was placed $5,000 on Hooker, and Hooker lost, and so this dude lost $5,000, and that just shows gambling addiction across America. And I hope that dude's fine, but there is a good chance that dude is, has a bad relationship with his relatives, and probably is not that not that happy in life, because gambling addiction is a crippling addiction, and it's just like alcohol addiction. It's something that really needs to be thought out about in America. I'm not going to be trying to be like Carrie Nation, but they need to think about that. So currently it is raining outside. Here we go. We're going to be talking about first UFC 257. As I said, Mike Chandler, he's now ranked number 4 in the world. Hooker is now down to 8. McGregor also dropped 2 to 6. You got number 1, which is Khabib, and you got number 2, which is Dustin Poirier. And Poirier wants the Khabib fight, but I think Khabib is retired. And so I think Khabib is, he could come back, but I don't think a lot of people I don't think he is going to come back. So, Khabib could, come back for fight number 30, or he could just, call it. And, Khabib is awesome. He's an awesome fighter, and Poirier wants UFC to do this, to bring back Khabib. And it's going to be interesting. And Dana White said if Khabib doesn't want to return, he's not going to push it. And so I don't know if he's going to, his career ended in 2020, and I don't know if Khabib is going to continue. But if he doesn't, then He doesn't. And, well, we're going to have to live with it. And you know, Dustin Poirier, if Khabib is really officially retired, then Khabib keeps his belt and Poirier moves to, well, he becomes the unofficial number one in the world because Khabib is out of, I think it's like a year, and then Khabib has to give his belt back or something like that. I don't know, or he keeps the belt. I can't remember if UFC allows them to keep the belt. Probably allows them to keep the belt. A lot of people allow them to keep the belt now. But, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be crazy seeing what proceeds in the next couple months. I officially, as you know, thought that McGregor was going to win this. And I definitely think that in 2022 we will have a McGregor versus Poirier number 5. Or number 2. Or, excuse me, number 3. I think we'll have that. Also, I don't know. Did they do on the topic of boxing, did Wilder and Fury do number 3? No, they only did 2, I think. That was, yeah. Let me see. God, the cost of pay-per-view today is nuts. Let me see. Yeah, so Tyson Fury's good. He's a good dude. And yeah, so I mean, and you've got Deontay Wilder, who's also a good dude. And I mean, it's crazy. This year is crazy. The whole next months are going to be crazy. We'll probably see some UFC fight nights. I mean, the UFC lightweight division is absolutely stacked, and I mean, I think that this is going to come down to, a title fight. And, it's going to be interesting. And, to say the least, I don't think McGregor's ever going to fight Jake Paul, and I'll speak more on that in a few minutes. But, yeah, I really think that there's going to be a Poirier-McGregor 3. They've got a lot of respect for each other. It's really nice to see them out there. And, yeah, that is officially what I think is going to happen. UFC 257 surprised me. It looked like both fighters were extremely tired. And by tired, I don't mean like worn out or like their careers were worn out. I just think that they just had something like maybe jet lag or something where they had just settled into the time there, because the fight was there at like 7 a.m. Like, it was nuts. And so, it is something that is completely weird. And so, I mean, it was just bad. It was just bad. And, it was a good fight. I think that a lot of people thought after the first, excuse me, let me continue this. After the first round, I think a lot of people thought it was going to division or decision. And it did not. It did not, to say the least. It did not. Because I think that McGregor was avoiding the calf shots, and he eventually did not avoid the calf shots. And, he stopped, and it was not good. And so I think McGregor stopped moving and kind of tired him out. Both guys tired themselves out. And, Poirier ended up getting the best of McGregor, knocking him out, and that is it. And then we have, to say the least, we have a crazy stuff going on. We have some crazy stuff. Obviously, we have the Jake Paul. He's back to fighting. obviously, if you asked your parents who Jake Paul was, who they thought Jake Paul was, they would not know, because they would expect, if you were to ever drop, something like an article on this fight, they'd be like, don't do this because this is bad or something like that. It would be like something like that. It'll reflect badly. The thing is this fight is going to be interesting. I definitely, from the start, I thought that this was just Jake Paul was running out of money and wanted to fight someone, so he chose to fight, what he thought he let his training group pick the fighter. And that's the thing, is they picked Ben Askren. And so, according to Ariel, and at ESPN, he has the show, the boxing show, UFC show, and he said that Jake Paul's team had selected it for him. So Jake Paul was going around saying, challenging all these big fighters, but I think the fact that his team, I think he just lets his team pick out the fights, and his team is extremely smart. I mean, first of all, they chose, Gibb. I think nobody was expecting an Isan Gibb to, fight Jake Paul. I mean, first of all, the first ever Paul fight was Paul versus Deji, Combi Shorts Gamer. And that was something that I don't think they recognize as an actual fight, because he's only 2-0. And so he would be 3-0 in my thought, but he's not. So he's 2-0. And I don't think they recognize that fight. But just saying, I definitely think that we're going to see a Jake Paul KSI fight, just speaking on that. KSI is ready to do this, but I'm going to speak a lot on this on my main, because I'm going to do a full video on this, and it's just going to be a rant, because I think that this is super stupid that they're doing in LA. In LA, of all places, which has 1/100th of the COVID cases, which you may think, Hugo, that's not that much. Well, there's only a couple cities in the world that are close to that, and 1/100th is not good. It's not good. 1 million cases. LA has 1 million cases. And, they're one of the only cities in the world, LA County, one of the only counties in the world to have 1 million cases. And it's a little bit alarming that, a man that, people that strive on, I know California strived on, COVID, on making everybody shelter in place for COVID. They have not done COVID well. The COVID has been crazy. And I think for California, especially when Governor Newsom, this fight comes abnormally announced right after COVID, normally comes as something right after Governor Newsom said everybody can reopen now, because it's really weird. It's just something really weird, and and I think that that's the thing with Jake Paul, is he thinks that boxers do it for the money. They don't. They do it for the craft. They like their craft, and there's a lot of respect in boxing. And that's what the whole UFC has shown. All these UFC guys are big friends and big fans of each other. And so Ben Askren, I think the only reason that Jake Paul's team chose Ben Askren is, I didn't get to Jake Paul's second win, which was with Nate Robinson, and as you've heard, I don't think he actually had sparring at his training, so he wasn't ready to get hit, and he was undertrained, and so that's what Jake Paul got on him. And I think the thing is it's going to be a crazy fight. It is. It definitely is. And Ben Askren, I think that they're underestimating him heavily. He was 19-0 until he lost his title, I think, because he retired for a year or something, lost the title, and then he went on to a title. He didn't go on to title fights, and I don't think he felt like he was good anymore and just trying to drop his last 2 fights. But he's 19-2. I think he's ready to regain some popularity by beating Jake Paul. Now, I don't want to go in too much detail into this because, I don't want this to be an hour thing. But I think that, if this thing goes to decision, unless we really see both fighters battling it out, I think it's going to take Jake Paul to lose to really understand what boxing is. Because if he does lose, he's probably going to pull off something like, oh my God, it was thrown, it was rigged. And I think everybody's going to be, no matter the thing, it's going to be someone saying it's rigged. Like Jake Paul is going to say it was rigged, or the referee was paid by Ben Askren's team. He'll say that, and he'll get 10 million people thinking that, mainly 10 million, kids. But that's the thing. That's with fighting Jake Paul comes the thing, and I think Jake Paul's trying to be like Floyd Mayweather, never lose a fight. But that's what comes with you when you have a massive ego. And I had a massive ego because I played basketball on this one team, and we went undefeated the whole year. And I had a massive ego, and then the next year we lost. We lost a lot of games, and I was like, okay. And it really sat me down, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to stay content. I can't say, oh yeah, they're paying them off. I can't do that. But I definitely think that if that comes, I definitely think Jake Paul will say something. And I know Logan Paul said something for KSI's fight, but it wasn't going to change anything, and Logan knew that, and Logan was content. He wasn't a sore loser about it. He was very nice about it, and it was just, they got back to being friends. And I just think that it's super annoying that we have Jake Paul who thinks that he's, the best man in the world, is now going to fight. He's going to fight real fighters, and this could create something crazy. This could create something that is insane. And by something that is insane, I mean, if he loses this Askren fight and then eventually loses KSI's fight, he may go crazy. If he fights against KSI, and I really don't think they should keep this fight on the date it is because it's the spring, and especially if it's, raining, it could be a little bit colder for the viewers, and it could also create a massive super spreader event. I don't know how many viewers they're going to have. I know it's at a fight club. It'll probably have something around 200 viewers. LA County, I don't know what LA County has done yet to shut this down or anything, but it's going to be very interesting. And, it's going to be crazy. And so, Jake Paul and Ben Askren, it's going to be interesting. I think that if Paul wins this thing, if he just knocks out Ben Askren one punch, I definitely think that I'll think that it's fake. Because there is the chance that I think this could be, there could be a contractual agreement that Ben Askren couldn't know what he was doing, or Jake Paul, pulls some contract stuff making it that, that Jake Paul wins, because I think it's going to come down to where he's and you can even see it in his Twitter presence. Either Jake Paul has two sides of his life where he's really, really, really supremely, I'm very sorry for saying this, but he's supremely douchey on one side, and on the other side, he's super nice. But from my experience knowing his presence and knowing some people that have been around him, the presence he has online is the same presence he has in his life, in his real life. And it's not good. It's not good for those people, because it really backfires when those type of people lose, and when they lose hard and they take it hard and they don't move on to the next fight. That's the thing with Conor McGregor is he's 22-4-0, 22-5-0, and he says, okay, I lose. It's fine. I've experienced it 5 times. We'll move on, It's, that's what the UFC was made to. If you listen to, I believe, the 30 for 30 podcast on it, I believe Tony Robbins did a podcast with Dana White or something like that, and it just shows that the UFC is created on something where 2 fighters can fight and then have a beer together the next day or that night, and maybe watch the replay. It's not made for sore losers. That's what the UFC is. It's not made for sore losers. That's why a lot of UFC fighters are not undefeated. The UFC, having an undefeated fighter in the UFC and in boxing is super, 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 super weird. I mean, Mayweather, you've got Mayweather, who's 51-0. Mayweather's, absolute beast. He's done well. And you have, Tyson, but Tyson did well. And Tyson's, I think Tyson just came back for charity. And that's the good part about Tyson is he just, he did it for charity. And if he does legitimately come back to box, I will be happy. I will say I will be happy. But I'm saying Mayweather was good. If Mayweather does end up fighting Jake Paul, I know Mayweather's supposed to, already fought or is supposed to fight Logan Paul, which I think is going to be interesting. May the best man win. It's going to definitely be interesting, but I think that I've seen ego consume people, and I don't want Jake Paul's ego to consume him, which some people can argue it already has. I'm not standing up for the guy. I heavily do not like him for the comments he's made, the stuff he's done. I just don't like him. I think that he could clean himself up and become a more likable person, but it's not good. It's not good. And I'm just saying, I think that if I were to make my executive prediction, I think that if this thing isn't rigged, I think that it'll be Askren knocking him out in the 6th round. I think Askren's just gonna, that's the thing with, this is gonna be like Mayweather and McGregor. You're getting a guy who is not a boxer out of his UFC cocoon, and moving him to a completely different cocoon, and eventually, he's either A, gonna die, or B, gonna, which by dying I mean lose, or B, gonna thrive. And it's really weird, but a lot of people say that Ben Askren's not gonna do well because he's not a boxer. He's more of a wrestler. And, there's no submission. I definitely think if they put Jake Paul in an octagon, he'd lose in the 1st round because he wouldn't know what to do with calf kicks happening coming at his. But the fighters are relatively the same. Just Jake Paul has a longer reach, and his reach is longer. So I think that ultimately, if this thing does come down to punches, it will come down to Jake Paul. But I think that ultimately it's going to be an Askren knockout. And some could argue, which I have all the options on my article that I'm releasing tomorrow, or today, while you're listening to it, it's released. But it's just crazy. And, Askren is interesting. And, we'll have to see what happens. Stay safe. And, stay healthy. Have a great day. I'm Hugo Traverso. This has been the Hugo Sports 360 podcast, episode 2. We're also going to have a part 2 on this. Adios.